Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Wednesday, October 15th, just about 7:45 in the evening, and this is our daily recap video for our three YieldMax weekly paying funds: Ulti, the Ultra Option Income Strategy Fund; SLTY, the Ultra Short Option Income Strategy Fund; and LFGY, the Crypto Industry Option Income Fund. If you didn't catch the big changes video that I put out a couple of days ago right here, then this website's probably looking pretty wild to you. They did update it. I think it's pretty cool. Definitely brought it up to the times. Didn't look like something old that I made, but all the information's still there. We did talk today on Spaces. That is, you got to have X, or what used to be Twitter, to get on these Spaces talks. But every Wednesday, the YieldMax people, Jay Pestricelli, Mike Venuto, Mike Coe, and Josh, I believe Josh is kind of the PR guy, but they all come on, they make their announcements, and then they have an hour conversation with the community, and anybody can raise their hand and ask questions. So we talked to them about this with the 4 digits not showing for all the distributions, and they are aware of it and will be updating it. So that's just it was kind of a overlooked by the web designers, not thinking about change going out beyond pennies. So I'm on X, like I said, at ETF_Inspector1. I post letting you know when videos are premiering, if you'd like to catch the live chats and the announcements. So now there's just announcements all the time because YieldMax has taken their weeklies to Tuesday, Declaration Day, and then what used to all be their Group A, B, C, and D monthlies are now called Group 2, and they get announced on Wednesdays because they're paying every week. So it's always announcement time or payday time. So it's kind of a fun time to be with YieldMax. Let's take a quick look at the market before we get into the specifics. Ulti was up today, so we like to see that up 0.58%. It was an odd day, up high, then down low, then back up, finishing positive. LFGY looking good, up 1.76%. That's beautiful. That's all of the distribution and then some. So even after we open tomorrow, down the amount of distribution will actually still be higher than where we opened or where we would have started today. And then if everything's going up, Salty's not, because they're short in the market, so they were down 1.5%. All right, we'll go through the specifics of each of the underlyings within the funds, but we'll start with the trades for Ulti. All right, we did have some changes. So you saw in the thumbnail, well, you didn't see this one. We sold about a quarter of our shares, 25% of our MP Materials Corp shares, and then sold all of our shares of Open Door. We added Cipher Mining to the fund. We sold our shares of Bullish, and we bought some more Iron Limited to go along with the shares that we purchased yesterday. Yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday. All right, after that, we went ahead and started trading options. So I did not count any of this money going in or out against the daily options trading credits or debits, because I wouldn't want to call this a $52 million loss just buying into Cipher. And so unless you were going to start way back at the beginning and keep track of every purchase to know cost averages and everything else, it's just not something I'm able to do. So my numbers, I tell it all the time, they're not perfect. These are just helping us get ballpark numbers so we can make some guesstimates and just keep track of the general direction. All right, so for starters, we were closing out everything on Bullish because we sold all our shares. So we're done with them. And the protective puts basically gave us some money at the end, $866,000 credit. Bitmine Immersion, we brought in $2 million closing and rolling. At this point, we've pushed it the next week. Cipher, this is a new one. So we bought shares. We're going to sell the maximum amount of calls to generate income and buy the maximum amount of puts to protect our shares. That is what's considered a collar strategy. That's what they trade here in Ulti. Next, we got Coin. We were just adjusting the strikes on our sold calls, still staying within the same week, bringing them down closer to the money. That brought in $500,000. I forgot to say it, but Cipher brought in $1 million credit on that. options trade. Figma brought in $1.2 million, closing and rolling to a closer to the money strike, still staying within the same week. So they're doing a good job generating income there. Robinhood, now we're closing and rolling to the next week for this underlying. It brought in $3.2 million. As you can see, paying 36 cents to close out the calls, selling the new ones for $4. The puts were worth another $3 a share, so that was $2 million. But we had to use 2 out of those $3 to purchase the new puts. Iron, this is more of the, we bought more shares up top, so we're going to do the collar strategy on them. That brought in $917,000. MP Materials Corp, we're just closing out the options that were associated with the shares that we sold. So that brought in $2.6 million because the price has been dropping, so the calls were cheap to close out, comparable to the puts that we got to sell. Strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, closing out. What are we doing here? And rolling to next week, that brought in $1.7 million. So call it a win, right? Paying 47 and 49 cents, selling for $10.36, $10.73. Open, we're just closing out all of our positions because we sold all of our shares. Just about $2 million credit on that one. That's because all those protective puts brought in a nice amount of value. New Scale Power. This is always frustrating when they got 10,000 options, contracts on something, and they trade one of them separate. But in any case, closing and rolling to next week. So hold on a second. Yep. Closing and rolling the next week. Sorry for the confusion. At this point, though, we were originally selling puts as well as selling calls. So when we closed everything out, we only sold calls going into next week. We did not sell any puts. So that cost us $9.9 million. So that's because New Scale went up, obviously, beyond our strike price. And finally, SoundHound, closing and rolling to next week, cost us $5.5 million. So all in all, it was a $924,000 credit day. It's the first positive day for the week. But that's going to go along with a $53 million increase in the value of our underlying shares. So that kind of goes along with the week. We're having a very nice week as far as share value increases every day. Obviously, that's going to generally result in trading losses on the options, but today we had enough good to offset the bad to where we were still positive. All right, when we take a look at the underlyings to see how they performed, Affirm was up almost 0.2. Calls are still in play for this week at 78, 6.7% out of the money. They've also sold puts at 65 that are 11% out. Bullish was down 1.1%. We closed everything out. We sold all our shares. We're done. Let's see if we got a better price than the closing price, 58.65. Nope, we actually sold for less than that. So if we would have held on to the end of the day, we might have made a little bit more money. Bitmine Immersion up 1.1%. Further out of the money calls got rolled. Closer ones at 57 are still in play, 6.5% out of the money. CNC, that's Centene Corp. Still an odd one. I will admit I still haven't even looked into them to see what they do. But this is one where we don't own shares. It's just a put credit spread. So we're selling the 37s. And with the stock closing at 35.79, they are 3.3% in the money. Not working out well. Coinbase was down 1.5%. Calls sold at 370 are 10% out of the money. CoreWeave up 3.8%. Still got a ways to go. 2.7 and 3.4% on those 143s and 144s. $523 million in government obligation funds. Negative $100 million in cash and others. Obviously, after today, I'm not sure whether it's whether it pulls out of this one or pulls out of cash. It's going to go down enough to pay out 9 cents a share for 627 million shares. So call it 10, that'd be 62 million. Sorry, I'm bouncing all around here. Figma up almost 5%. Good day for them. Even with that, they still were 9.6% out of the money, so they closed those and rolled them, took the win. Galaxy, here's another put spread where we're selling the 3950s. We don't own any shares. They are 5.7% out of the money, so they are looking like a win. Hims and Hers was the big winner today, up over 16%. That took their calls into the money. They didn't make any moves, so it's possible they're either thinking that it's going to pull back some, or it just made the cost to close out too high, too much extrinsic value, and they're going to let a little bit more time decay before they close them out. 56s and 60s are about 4.5% and 10.8% in the money. They also sold puts to help pay for the puts. That obviously turned out to be a great idea because they are not even remotely close to being in the money. So that was free money to help pay for the insurance policy. Robinhood was down a little over 0.5%. Further out of the money positions were rolled. The 146s are still in play for this week, 8.8% out of the money. Hut 8 Corp was up almost 8%. Unfortunately, they were already in the money when the day started, so they just went further to almost 11% in the money on those 48s. Fortunately, we just added these guys yesterday, and practically no money in them, less than $1 million when we, in a lot of stocks, have $150 million. So it really didn't make that big of a difference. Would have been nice if we bought a ton of shares, but if they were in the money at the start and continued in the money, then it wouldn't have mattered because we would have had offsetting increases in market value and decreases as far as the how much it would cost to close out the option. Iron Limited down 2.2%. Actually in the money. So these are the two that they just added yesterday, and in both occasions they sold in the money calls. That's very confusing. Not their typical strategy, but I guess we'll see. I can't imagine being bullish on them and yet thinking they're going to drop. That'd be the only reason you'd sell in the money calls. But in any case, $66 calls. They're for next, or no, they are for this week. That's surprising. 2.9% in the money. Lucid Group down 1.1%. $23.50 calls are 8.4% out of the money. Lululemon, it's a put spread with no shares. They sold the 172.50 side of it for income. They're 3.2% in the money. MP Materials Corp was down big, 8.89%. I'm not sure. I want to say that they were on a good run and then just pulled back, but I am not positive. Obviously, year to date, they're killing it, but we haven't had them that long. Yeah, so that's okay. Either way, so today's sale of about 25% was probably still taking some profits. Just let's see if they got a better price than this 89.88. Nope, sold it for less. So right now we're 0-2. Strategy down 1.3%. Closed and rolled the further out of the money positions. 330s are still in play, 11.2% out of the money. Surprising, actually, that they would have calls sold that close together, $2.50 apart on a $330 strike. But Open Door, here's another one where we went ahead and closed out the position, sold all the shares, closed all the options. 738 is the closing price. Did they get more than that? Yes, in all three occasions. So at least they didn't time all three of them wrong. Not that anybody can time the market. Palantir was down a fraction, 0.07%. Calls sold at 185 for next Friday, not this Friday, are 3% out of the money. Pony was up 0.86%. They have 2150s and 2350s sold 4 times as many contracts at the closer strike, 1.3 and 10.8% out of the money. Quantum Computing was down 2.5%. They have $21 calls in the money by 1%, and then 22.50s and 23s just about 6 and 8% out of the money. Rigetti Computing up 0.39%. 49s and 50s were already way in the money and just keep going. 13 and 11%. They do still have 58s in play that are almost 3% out of the money. Rocket Lab up 1.8%. They have $70 calls expiring Friday, 1% out of the money. Over $200 million in them. They might be our largest holding. Let's see, 6.87%. We got a 6.85 with Rigetti, so Rocket and Rigetti are huge. Yep, they're our biggest holding. And it's not because they've put the most money into them. It's just because the stock has risen so much. Rocket Companies now, separate company, down 1%. They have $17.50 calls sold, 4.5% out of the money. Sorry about that. $14 puts sold, 16% out of the money. Stop. NewScale Power, the big winner today, up 16+%. Unfortunately, the 42s were already in the money when the day started, so they went deeper. They did close and roll those. Then they also had 46s and 49s that started the day out of the money but ended in 8 and almost 14%. And then they went ahead and closed out their sold puts and some of their purchased puts. So obviously we did not get to realize very much of that nice increase because it would have caused our cost to close out increasing as well. SoundHound AI up 2.5%. The 19s were way in the money. They finally closed them out. They still have 22s in play, 2.9% out of the money. Symbotic up 2.3%. 71s were already in the money as well. Went further, 5.7%. And $77 calls are 2% out of the money. And then finally, Upstart Holdings up 1.3%. They have $55 calls that are 7.7% out of the money and $42 puts that are 17.76. Sounds like freedom. 17.76% out of the money. So that is how we had a roughly $53 million increase in the value of our underlying shares. That is not the total overall number for the fund because every single option is going to change, whether increasing or decreasing in value along with it. So this just gives you a ballpark. This is how the underlying shares moved. All right, there's $3.3 billion in assets under management prior to today. So that doesn't take into account anything I've talked to you about. And it also doesn't take into account if people bought into or sold out of the fund. But as far as yesterday, there was no changes. $627,850,000. NAV at the start of the day, 532. Share price increased a few cents today. It is surprising that some of these other ones like LFGY and SLTY actually trade at a premium. Always a handful, sometimes 10, 15, 20 or more cents higher than the NAV. Ulti generally trades right at the NAV. But all right, let's go ahead and just in case you missed it, Ulti did announce 9.08 cents per share as their distribution yesterday, Tuesday. Today was X day, so tomorrow we're getting our Ulti money a day earlier than we're used to. Sorry, my dog sees something outside the front window and can't let it go. All right, next we'll go with LFGY next. Starting off with the trades. All right, so we see them selling a small portion of each of the underlyings. I did go through and check. This is sum of everything. It totaled about $3.3 million. So at this point, though, we would call this taking profits, not necessarily a bad thing where when you need to sell to bring in some money, because LFGY has been on a tear for 5-6 weeks now. So taking a little bit of profits and distributing some income. All right, from there, they so everything that they sold, they're going to need to close out the options associated with them. We're not going to sit there and go through line by line on those. A lot of them are very small transactions. I've seen a couple in the $30 range, $6 there. So realistically, we're just going to talk about complete close and rolls. So the first one is BitDeer. Still staying within the same week, though, surprisingly. But that cost us $300,000. CleanSpark, closing and rolling again, still within the same week, cost $176,000. So these are ones where the share price has gone beyond our sold strike price on the calls, so we are adjusting up. Coinbase, now we're rolling to next week. That brought in a credit of just about $200,000. Core Scientific, again rolling to next week, still cost us $11,000. Circle Internet Group, we're rolling the next week. That brought in a credit of $82,000. Robinhood, we are closing and rolling to next week with a credit of $182,000. Mara, closing and rolling the next week. So a lot of these, though, where we are closing call spreads and then we're opening just a sold covered call, not purchasing the other side of that. That still cost us $295,000 even without purchasing the other leg there. MBTX, closing and rolling to next week, was a credit of $214,000. Nvidia, closing and rolling to next week, was a credit of $59,000. As you can see, any of these where they're credits, they're doing well with the trades, right? Paying 6 and 10 cents to close out these calls, collecting $3.92 on the new ones, so very nice. Opera or Oprah, whatever you want to call it, $271,000 credit. They rolled from this week to the middle or end of next month, 11/21. So you better get a big credit for that long of a roll, $271,000. And finally, PayPal was the last complete closeout and roll, resulting in a $69,000 credit, paying 4 cents a share to close those contracts out, collecting $1 plus. So all in all, that resulted in a $266,000 credit on the options trading. So far, we've got 2 good days and 1 no trade day. So they're doing well as far as bringing in credits. And the funds actually, share-wise, are doing well too. Both days where they were performing the options trades and brought in credits go along with 2 days where shares increased, which is not normally the case. But if you watch the week look ahead, I did talk to you about how since Friday dropped so much, kind of after we rolled, we had a good opportunity if markets moved up to capture the upside and still make money. And so that's what you're seeing this week. It's working out very nicely. When we look at the holdings within LFGY, we start with Bitmine Immersion going up 1.1%. Their calls at 59 are still 10% out of the money. Biggest difference here, LFGY is going to be crypto and crypto related only type things, not necessarily the highest implied volatility funds, but a lot of them are very high implied volatility. But the biggest difference is you're not going to see protective puts. You're just seeing covered call strategy. All right, BitDeer, the big winner, up 28.73%. Unfortunately, that took their calls 22% in the money, but they did close and roll those positions. CleanSpark was up 5.5%. Again, closed and rolled all those positions. They started in the money, so we didn't get to capture that nice increase. Coinbase was down 1.5%. All positions closed and rolled. Core Scientific up 5.2%. The deeper in the money positions were rolled. They still have which were inconsequential, 72 contracts compared to 5,400. So the 5,400 are still in play at 19, but they're in the money by 4.7%. Circle Internet Group up a fraction. It was 2 cents from yesterday. They did close and roll everything. iShares Ethereum Trust ETF was down just about 3%. $34 calls expiring tomorrow are 12+% out of the money. Hardly anything in dry powder. Galaxy Digital, 1.9% increase. $43 calls are still out of the money by 2.5%. GameStop was up 0.8%, and their calls are out of the money by 4.7 and 6.8% at 24.50 and 25. Again, the 24.50s are the ones that matter. 2,300 contracts compared to 32. Robinhood Markets was down a little over 0.5%, but they still took the win, closing and rolling those to a new strike. Hut 8 Corp was up almost 8%, and unlike Ulti, where they had sold those in the money and didn't get to capture that increase, LFGY was sold far enough out that they are still out of the money by 9 cents on those 54s. IBIT was down 1.1%, so it's very odd to see the crypto fund move up with most underlyings moving up while the actual IBIT and ETHA dropped. But there's no options there, so it's just the share value decrease. Mara was up 2.7%. Unfortunately, their calls were already deep in the money and went further, but they closed and rolled them. MBTX, there's no shares, just the options, and they did close out this call credit spread for a win. They still have this put debit spread in play with the 255s expiring at the end of the year. They are 3% out of the money. Mercado Libre was the big loser today, down 5+%. 2200s are 7.4% out of the money. Surprised they didn't close those. Usually they only play these 1, 2, 3% out. Strategy was down 1.3%. They have $342.50 calls expiring Friday that are 15% out of the money. NU Holdings was up 1.8%, taking their $15 calls into the money by 1.1. NVIDIA was down 0.1%. All positions closed and rolled for a win. Opera was down 0.7%. The ones that matter, 4,300 contracts at 20 got closed and rolled. 1750s are still in play, 6.8% out of the money, but there's only 94 contracts there. We're literally talking about $1,000. PayPal down 1.6%. All positions closed and rolled. Riot Platforms down 0.25%. $22.50 calls are 1.6% out of the money. And finally, Block down less than 0.1%. $79 calls expiring Friday are 3.8% out of the money. So that is how we had a roughly $5.1 million increase in the value of the shares within the fund. Our assets under management, $214 million, just about $215. No change yesterday as far as shares is concerned. 5.8 million. NAV at the start of the day, 37.06, and then the share price climbed to 37.82 by the end. And we got a nice distribution announcement yesterday. I want to say 58 and change. Yeah, 58.31. All right, and finally we will go to SLTY. Try not to spend quite as much time on SLTY because there's just not a lot of money into it, so there can't be a whole lot of you guys watching for this. So what did I do right off the bat? Oh, so they bought to close. So these guys short shares, so they start out selling short. So then when they're getting rid of them, rather than selling to get out of it, you have to buy to get out of it. That's why it's a buy to close as opposed to just buying something. Not a complete closeout, just 4,000 contracts. I think they have like 16,000, so this was like a 25%. And then closing the options to go along with those shares brought in a credit of 92,000. BitDeer, this is a close and roll, but still keeping it within the same week. Just bringing the strikes closer, $140,000 credit. Enphase Energy, same thing, just adjusting the strikes on the sold puts, still within the same week, $5,000 credit. Same story on Lemonade, $4,000 credit, and same story on Tesla, $2,000 credit. So it was a $245,000 surplus or credit as far as the options trading for the fund. It's going to go along with a $500,000 decrease in the value of the underlyings because this bull doesn't want to stop running, and so shorting it is not working out well. All right, Astera Labs was first, down a fraction. Puts are actually already in the money at 162.50, 0.6%. AMD was up almost 10%. That brought their puts out of the money at 225 to 5.7%. They've also got calls sold at 275, 15% out of the money. AST Space Mobile up 1.25%. $90 puts are almost 6% out. $110 calls are almost 15% out. Bloom Energy Corp up 2.25. So I know I explain this all the time, but just in case you're somebody newer, I don't know why my screen just jumped all over the place. But when the share value increases, if you have shorted the fund, then your value actually decreases. So everything's going to work backwards. When things go down, they increase the value of this fund, and when things go up, they decrease it. So Bloom Energy, with that increase, their $95 puts are 18.5% out. BitDeer Technology, that hurts a lot, 28% increase. So all those positions got closed and rolled. But this is why you buy protective calls. This is a reverse collar strategy. So the opposite of Ulti. So they are buying calls to protect in the event that their shorted shares move up, which is what happened. So as you can see, these $24 calls were way in the money, 7%. Let's just see what they got for them real quick. $24 calls when they sold them. Yeah, brought in $214,000. That's literally where all the money came from. Otherwise, it would have been a loss without that. All right, Circle Internet Group up 2 cents, like we said. They've got puts sold at 141 that are almost 5% out. Calls sold at 210 that aren't even in the same stratosphere. 56% out of the money. Duolingo up 2.5%. $325 puts are 4.7% out. $410 calls are 20% out. Enphase was up 3%. They went ahead and closed those positions. GitLab down 2.5%. So here's what we're talking about. That actually increases our value. I shouldn't say R on this one. I'm so used to saying it. SLTY is the only thing I cover that I do not own shares of. $43.50 puts are 1/3% out of the money, and $53 calls are 21% out. Kratos Defense and Security was the biggest loser as far as stock share percentage, but that helps the fund. So they went down 4.95%, just about 5. Unfortunately, their puts were already in the money and went deeper, so they are not going to get to capture that move, especially without having actively managed it, because the options were already in the money and just went deeper, so they would have increased in their cost to close out at the same time as the share values were helping. But the sold calls at 120 are 32% out. Lemonade down 0.13%. Puts were closed and rolled. Nebius Group down 1.8%, taking their puts just barely in the money. $126 puts are 0.1% in the money. Let's see. They're only 17 cents in the money, so it's not the end of the world. Even if they were to end there, they'll still make out okay. RH down a little over 3.5%, taking their $177.50 puts into the money by 0.5%. They have $220 calls, also sold 24% out. Tesla was up 1.3%. They closed and rolled those puts to a closer strike. And finally, United Airlines. This one's fairly new, up 0.87%. Puts are sold at 103.8% out of the money. So that's how you had a $537,000 decrease in the value of the fund. Assets under management at the start of the day, almost $17.5 million. Outstanding shares, 450,000. The NAV was 38.85 when the day started, and SLTY closed around 38.32. 60 cents was last week's distribution. I think it was like 46 cents this week. Yeah. All right, so lots of information. 34 minutes. Jeez, I took too long to get it to you. So now I got a dad joke for you. I think I'm going to give you 2 dad jokes just because I didn't think it's that funny, so I'll read you two of them. Maybe two half funny jokes will equal one full one. So appreciate all the likes, shares, comments, all the support. I like talking with you guys in the live chats, everything like that. So here's your dad joke rewards. So first one, why do dads tell such corny jokes? Because they want you to grown up. Grown up. Yeah, see, that's why it was bad. That's why I'm giving you two. All right, second dad joke. When is a door not a door? When it's a jar. That might be one of the oldest dad jokes I've heard. I don't know. Actually, most of the people watching this are probably as old as me or older, so you can probably remember when your car would say the door is ajar. All right, I've had enough. Good luck trading tomorrow. Have a good night. I'll catch you in the next video.